one of them in DPS, and I oversee contracts for the Department of Aviation, which includes both Midway and O'Hare. So this afternoon, we're going to talk about the procurement fundamentals. So it'll prepare you at understanding what our department is about, the process itself, and just as Jackie pointed out, we'll go over some questions that you might have. Okay? DPS is the contracting authority for the Department of Procurement Services. Together as a team, we guarantee open, fair, and timeless process by establishing communications, enforcing business practices. Okay. Next slide. Our department goals are department overview, laws governing and procurement, procurement terms, types of procurement, certification, contract monitoring and compliance, programs and bid incentives, and DPS website, and of course, questions and answers. So just as Jackie had pointed out earlier on, we have a whole section about the one of the elements of a contract, which is compliance and certification. And of course, there's multiple elements that make up the actual contract. But before we get to a contract, we have to establish and issue a solicitation. Okay, there are laws governing our process. One of them is the Municipal Code, Act 65 ILC 5/8-10-1, the statute that governs the city procurement practices. Chapter 2-92 of the Municipal Code, city ordinances that govern the purchasing. Those are the rules and regulations for which the contracts are written, and we, as contract administration, follow throughout the course of the contracting process. Okay. A bid package. What is a bid package? It's a set of documents issued by the city to solicit bids for goods and services. Bid packages are now provided electronically through the city's e-procurement system. So back in the day, we had the bid and bond, and you as a bidder would submit your paper documents. We are no longer accepting paper. We are doing everything electronically. It's also visible for the day of the bid openings for the solicitations, bid opportunities that you're interested on their bid opening day. You can see all that on the YouTube. We have a YouTube station that features that. So when we issue a solicitation, should there be any modifications or changes to that actual solicitation, we will issue an addendum. An addendum is uploaded by the contract administration DPS staff, notifying you of any changes. And where do you find that? You find that in eProc. We also publish it in the Chicago Tribune to let you know that that particular project had some changes. And that's also part of our municipal code requirements. One of them, a contract. The contract's the written agreement between the city and the vendor will provide either goods or services. They could be professional services. They could be simple commodities as toilet tissue, janitorial services, glass repair and replacement. It runs the gamut. We have multiple different types of areas of contracts that we pursue. Anything, when you walk outside your door of your home, you will look around you all over the city. That's what we procure. Those are the types of solicitations that the Department of Procurement Services is actually soliciting, that you as a vendor have the opportunity to bid on. As part of a contract, once a contract's awarded, should there be any modifications or adjustments to the terms of the contract, the city will issue an amendment or a modification. What does that mean? So a contract is awarded, let's just say for janitorial services. Within that contract, there are terms and provisions, and they speak directly to the length of the contract. They also speak to making any adjustments. For example, a price adjustment may be a factor. A modification or an amendment would be issued depending upon the type of contract procurement method that is being addressed or you've been awarded. So that's part of the contract. So first you have a contract, and then what comes out of that is an amendment or a modification based off of the terms of the original contract. Okay. Next, we have the types of procurement. We have small orders, any solicitations for commodities and goods that are under $250,000 are procured under small orders. Competitive bids are for commodities, work service, and work service. Let me explain what a work service is, because if I'm mentioning it, I want to clarify what we're speaking about. A work service is a combination of a commodity and labor. And so we refer to it as a work service. So that's the type. So it's either a commodity or a work service. That's a competitive bid, and that's based on low price. Request for proposal, an RFP, request for qualification, RFQ, are professional services. That's how we classify them. We're looking for the best qualified firms. Price is a factor, but qualifications for professional services are important. For example, engineering. We may need a professional clinical psychiatrist for one of our health clinics. Those are professional services. Job order contracts, job order contracts known as JOC, and that's a construction contract. It's the simplest way of explaining that. It's as if you have a catalog for construction materials and work that needs to be performed. For example, if the city of Chicago has multiple facilities, let's use the Hero of Washington Library as an example. There is damage to the roof. We would utilize a JOC contract as one of the options that we would actually be able to have those services, the roof repair for the library. That's just an example. That's a high level example of what we have. So small order, now we're getting into the intricate details of each of the procurement types. Procurements, as I mentioned, are goods and services. They're under $250,000. There's a compliance requirement for bids over $10,000. That's the MBE and WBE. Those are generally specified in each of those solicitations. The next is a competitive bid, which is a formal bid greater than $250,000. That also is advertised in the Chicago Tribune, and it's in the daily classified section. It's also available on the DPS, on the City of Chicago Department of Procurement Services DPS website. The bid and bond is where you can find some information, but presently the bid and bond room is closed. It's under construction. So all your information regarding new bid opportunities is all available on the DPS website. Bid solicitations generally are for a period of 10 to 30 calendar dates. That's the time for which the solicitation is publicly advertised. Planned deposits may be required for some bids. Construction bids will require a bid bond or a performance bond, depending upon the type of work it is, but generally bid deposits are specifically for construction contracts. A competitive bid, still in theory. So we issue a solicitation. It's advertised for 10 days. In that document, we will also offer the opportunity for a pre-bid. A pre-bid is the opportunity for you as the vendor community to come and learn more about that particular project. That's what we refer to as a pre-bid meeting. During that meeting, there might be a site visit that might be allowed. For example, if we were going back to the Hero of Washington, the library roof, right? If we were actually soliciting a competitive bid for a work service for the roof repair, we would have a pre-bid. It would be a panel of City of Chicago users, the department requesting it, as well as a representative from DPS, the actual specialist, who will be managing and whose name you will find throughout the document for questions. At that time, we give the presentation, we give the scope of work, we tell you what it's all about. We also, in that solicitation and during that pre-bid, identify and allow you to submit questions regarding the solicitation. This is your one and only opportunity to submit questions to the actual department to find out what you might not clearly understand in that particular bid. Now, it's always strongly encouraged for those interested parties to attend. In present day, a good number of those pre-bids are done in person. There occasionally are times that we may do them via Teams. So, but we strongly encourage the in-person because it's a great opportunity for you to network and to meet other vendors or to have an opportunity to talk about what services you might be able to offer as a compliance component part of an upcoming solicitation. Okay. Once the pre-bid has been completed that day, there is an allowance of so many days for those individuals that were interested, that participated, to submit questions specifically to that, as I use the example of the roofing service, roof repair for the library. So if you had questions about like how large is the roof, do they have to be union laborers, whatever your questions may be, that's your opportunity. Once we receive those questions, we review them, we provide the answers, we issue an addendum or a clarification. Again, that's all found on the DPS website. Also, you are notified by iSupplier. Next is the pre-bid meeting. Pretty much what I described to you overall. It's the opportunity for the department to showcase their need and inform you, the public, of what is advertised and what is required. Okay. Bid documents, that's we will, during the pre-bid, we will highlight some key sections of what is important that you need to read and what you also need to execute. It could be compliance. You also need to make sure that you sign the proposal page executed document section, which is closer to the very end of the electronic document. And if that document is not signed, your bid will be automatically rejected. So it's very important that you go through the document. I strongly recommend reviewing the actual solicitation before the pre-bid. So therefore you have your list of questions and you can listen and hear what they have to offer about the actual project, and perhaps your questions may be answered there. If not, then you have the opportunity to submit them during the question period. So not only do you have to sign that document that I mentioned to you, and if you don't sign the execution page, it has to be notarized by a notary. We must have this, otherwise your bid will not be accepted. Bid submittals. Earlier on, I mentioned that for a construction bid, there may be a bid deposit or a performance bond that is required. All of that information that is applicable is in the actual solicitation. Okay, so the will not exceed 10% of the contract, must be submitted in the proper form, not acceptable as cash. Specifically, the bid bonds. There's specific requirements as stated there that must be followed when submitting your bond for that construction project. All bids must be timely on the bid opening date. So if you're thinking about bidding on that Chicago Library, Harold Washington Library roof, and let's say the bid opens, all of our bid openings are held at 11 a.m. on the given day that it's advertised, and it's submitted electronically. If you wait to the last possible minute to submit that bid, the chances of the city receiving that bid are very slim. It's always advisable to submit those bids prior to the time that the bid is due on that bid opening date. You don't want to be filing a request to review your bid because you didn't make the timely time. So as I mentioned, it's Monday through Friday. The time is 11 o'clock. The bids are read out loud via YouTube. We no longer have the in-person for bid and bond. As I mentioned, the bid and bond room is closed at this time. Bids are tabulated. For example, let's say we receive 3 bid submissions for the Harold Washington roofing repair. Those vendors that had submitted, their names will be read out loud, as well as their grand total dollars. The bid tabulations are tabulated. They are checked for accuracy internally, and then they are posted on the DPS website. So then if you miss the bid opening, you can view them the next day, or if you're looking for a past bid opening for a particular project, that's also available on our website. Okay, the award process. Once we receive all the bids, as I mentioned, internally, DPS reviews them, makes the determination if the bidders are responsive and are they responsible for their awards. Once we vet them, we review them, and it's determined that there is a parent low bidder. From there, we notify and we share all this information with the requesting using department. Department reviews it. If they're in agreement with the competitive bid process, they will send over a recommendation of award to the Department of Procurement Services. From there on end, the specialist then takes all the information that was submitted along with some other documents, verifying that the company is who they are, if they're registered, if the performance bond is acceptable, whatever applicable required documents are stated in the solicitation. That's all checked by the specialist. Once we have all that information, we then go ahead, package it electronically. We're going all through an electronic process these days, and it'll go through the signature process. So ultimately, it will be awarded to a vendor. Now, in some instances, some of these bids may have more than one award. It's very important that you read the basis of award to determine if it's just one bidder or multiple bidders. Okay, moving on. Requisition for proposal. As I mentioned, RFPs, RFQs are professional services. The purpose of this, the goal and the ultimate response from an RFP or an RFQ is to find the firms that are the most qualified. Not necessarily the pricing, but the qualifications. Do they meet what the department is looking for? Within the RFP, there are evaluation criteria for which need to be met to determine if that particular firm or firms can go to the next level. So first we receive it, we check it for all its accuracy, just as we do with a competitive bid, except now what we're doing is we're going to be evaluating it. So it's a much more intense process, more detailed. There's individuals involved that are actually looking at the proposal based off of what has been submitted and what is actually detailed in the actual RFP to make sure that the proposal does meet the requirements, the qualifications, and the criteria that were posted in the RFP. Okay. Next slide. Just have to get my cursor on the button here. There we go. Okay. The next one is a request for qualifications. Again, this is a professional service contract. And what this one is, it pre-qualifies firms. It will also set up a pool of vendors. So if there is a specific task that needs to be completed, what is a task? A task is work. So we have various types. We refer to them as MCAs internally, which is a master consulting agreement. That will, when you go through the RFQ process, you're through the proposals, again, it's reviewed. There's an evaluation committee members that look at it, make the recommendation to the using department. The using department sends it over. If you qualify, there could be a pool, meaning a group of proposals, respondents that qualified, and then would be awarded should there be a need for a particular type of service as classified in the specification. For example, we have an MCA for emergency response planning during COVID, and now with the DNC and with the different happenings in the city, there are various using departments that may take advantage and look for that particular RFQ using those pool of vendors to find the right party to use as a consultant to guide them through the motions, the steps, and so that we can therefore perform and provide the right services to the public. That's just an example. That's not the process, but I was trying to give you an example of how an RFQ is awarded and what it means. So again, these are for pre-qualifications for a pool of vendors, and they're specifically for professional services, consulting, design, construction, training. It might be a medical area. It might be an auditor. It could be any one of those professional areas. Okay. Next is our JOC contract. Again, as I mentioned earlier on, this is specifically for construction. So JOC is a form. It's a job order contract. There's fixed prices, there's competitive bids, and these are all pre-set up. And so we look at, this is more of a construction catalog, as I mentioned earlier on, where there's set prices, there's set work, and there's set materials that are applicable for what is being sought. So it might be a small or a medium construction job. It could be technical specifications that a using department doesn't know how to write, but is looking for consultants to provide them that information. They would perhaps use a JOC. And also too, there's general contractors that are associated with this JOC that are actually the contractors that are performing the services or are setting up the work orders for the with subcontractors. So this is also another opportunity for certified firms to perhaps engage as a compliance partner, whether it be a certified MBE or WBE. In part of the contracting process, as I mentioned earlier on, we receive the bids, the specialists internally package it. One of the key items from that package is known as the economic disclosure statement, otherwise known in our world and procurement side, the EDS. And the EDS is actually disclosing, requesting the bidder to tell us who their ownership makeup is. Who are you owned by? Is it multiple is it multiple firms that are making it up as in a joint procurement? Or is it a single person who owns 100% of their small business? That may be it. So that is a requirement. Again, that's part of a municipal code requirement, the EDS, and it is required to be filled out for all awarded contracts, as well as amendments or modifications once a contract is awarded. Okay. Certification. So this is the area for which you as a firm may be a minority or a woman-owned, a veteran, and we have some other bid incentives as well, where you might want to become certified, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Okay, there's 6 types of certification, as I alluded to in the prior slide. There's an MBE, a minority-owned business enterprise, a WBE, a woman-owned business enterprise, a BEPD, business enterprise owned by people with disabilities, a DBE, disadvantaged business enterprise, and I love this one, ACDBE. Almost reminds you of when you're in the doctor's office for an eye exam and they're asking you to read the letters, but it is actually the airport concession disadvantaged business enterprise, and VBE is veteran-owned business enterprise. So let's go over them. MBE, WBE, BEPD, DBE, ACDBE, and VBE. And as the slides are coming, we'll discuss these a little further. Okay, so basic eligibility requirements for firms that fall into those certifications that I mentioned earlier on. You must own 51% of the company, whether it is a minority, a woman, a veteran, individuals with disabilities, or disadvantaged individuals. You must own 51% to either bid or to qualify as a for the certification entity part of the contract. Businesses must be small business and businesses must be independent. Okay. Next, we have the MBE and WBE. Within each of our solicitations, whether it be a competitive bid, a professional services, or a JOC, There is a component known as the compliance section, which there are percentage requirements that are required for each one of those procurements, whether it be an MBE, a WBE, or a DBE. MBE and WBE are more than likely found in all of the procurement methods. The DBE are specifically for federally funded projects. There are a lot of construction projects that are federally funded. CDOT, Water Management, the Department of Aviation, they have DBE requirements. Okay, unlike some of the other departments, it depends upon the project, the actual work that is being sought. Okay, commercial useful function. The City of Chicago Department of Procurement Services counts the MBE, WBE, and DBE expenditures toward the MBE, WBE goals only if the MBE, WBE, DBE is performing commercially useful function. So you must be performing in the proper role, the applicable. What is commercially function? A certified firm performs a commercially useful function when it is responsible for the execution of distinction element of the work of the contract, which is carried out by actually performing, managing, supervising, and work involved or fulfilling the responsibility as a joint venture. So you as a firm certified in either of those areas as applicable for that solicitation will earn credit if you identify yourself in one of those elements and under one of those certifications. Okay. Next, we have reduction waiver good faith efforts. So as I mentioned, almost every one of our procurement methods do have a form of compliance requirements known as the MBE, WBE, DBE, or VBE. So in order, so there's requirements. There may be a time where a bidder is unable to meet those full requirements, might need to request a waiver or a reduction of the requirements. There is a method for which needs to follow. You have to ask in advance if the CPO will consider doing a reduction or a waiver as part of the compliance requirement for that particular project. The other thing is when a contractor is seeking a waiver or a reduction for the M or WBE, goals must be demonstrated to satisfy that the CPO has made good faith to the CPO that you've made a good faith effort. What does that mean? So for example, again, we'll use the roofing services, repairs at the Harold Washington Library. There may be there be an MBE and WBE goals, 25 MBE and 5% WBE. So I, the vendor or bidder, cannot fulfill the 25 and 5. I'm only able to fulfill the 25 and 3. So I'm short 2% of the WBE. What I would do is I would actually prepare and do my research and show proof by submitting all that documentation to the CPO for her consideration. What kind of documents? Those documents, you would go to the City of Chicago's website, go under the C2 directory and see what firms can assist you with subcontracting work. In this case, in my example of the roofing, we will be needing material suppliers for different roofing, like let's say nails, hardware. So I would look for a firm that is a WBE for the 5% or multiple to make up the 5%. Well, I go in and I do my research and I keep a record of it in electronic or hard copy as proof that I did reach out to some firms to see if they could help me by supporting me by providing me quotes, as well as working as a subcontractor should I be awarded that contract. And unfortunately, none of them were available for whatever reasons. I then would have to take all that information that I went through, my research, my investigation, and ultimately my determination, and presented it to the CPO to determine if this is acceptable or not. Okay. Next, contract monitoring and compliance. So not only are we awarding these contracts and we identify an MBE or WBE and or DBE, we are monitoring and making sure that the awarded contractor is fulfilling those percentages and using those subcontractors as they identified, okay? And then we also are ensuring, depending upon the type of procurement, and in this case, Chicago Residency Ordinance requires equal opportunity commitments, which is known as the EEO. That is specifically speaking to construction contracts, CDOT, water management, aviation. Those are just a couple of departments, to name a few, where they will have construction and the Chicago residencies will come into play. What does that mean? There may be a requirement that you would receive a credit if you hire individuals from within the community for which the work is being performed. Okay, and all this information is also available on our website with more detail. I'm just giving you a high level overview and there's more specific information. So going back to the Chicago Residency Ordinance, CRO, constructions must be estimated at $100,000 or more to be funded by the City of Chicago, and 50% of that work hours must be performed by the actual residents, as I mentioned to you, of Chicago, and 7.5 of the total total work hours performed by the project by those areas. So there's requirements and they're real specific as to how you as the contractor would receive credit for those for that ordinance, the CRO. Okay. Equal opportunity. In order to promote the equal opportunity for minority and women personnel on a city-funded construction contract, an awarded criteria determination, which is a canvassing formula, must be inserted into each contract specification that it is estimated at $100,000 or more. Again, this is specific to a construction contract. So your overall bid for total dollar bid for that repair of the roof at the library might, let's just say, is $250,000. But if you fall within the equal opportunity requirements, your bid is then reduced, and then you now become a different level player in the overall bid tabulations. These are real specific to construction. So I know I'm giving you a high level overview, but I'm trying to give you examples as to how they would come into play. So they have a better understanding of how they work. Okay, bidders are invited to propose their minority and female employee utilization goals. Again, that's all part of your packaging for your bid, and this is specifically for construction. Okay. The prime contractor is an MBE or, ways to achieve your compliance. The prime contractor is an MBE or WBE, joint venturing with an MBE, WBE, or DBE. Subcontracting opportunities, a portion of it is one or more MBE or WBE, and purchasing materials that are used in the performance of the contract from one or more MBEs, WBEs, and DBEs. This is all primarily speaking to construction. This also would fall into the area of the job that I spoke about earlier on. Okay. Prime contractors are responsible for submitting monthly subcontractor payment certification forms, weekly certified payrolls, and waivers of lien. So in the case of the roofing for the library, if I were the prime, I would be responsible and accountable for compensating my subcontractors that are performing the services to repair that roof. I would be obligated to submit the certified payrolls to the city. And if there's any liens due to any penalties or mishaps, perhaps not having a permit, whatever it may be, that would be a reflection on me as the prime, not the subcontract. The prime is always responsible for the work and for making sure that the work is completed and that everyone is paid. Okay, programs and bid incentives. This is another area which is not just for, this is not just for construction, but it also involves non-construction. So we spoke about commodities, we talked about RFPs, RFQs, JOC, and I mentioned construction projects. So within the construction area, there are bid incentives for which we do have other workshops that go into the real particulars and more details about what is a small, how do I qualify or how do I apply small business initiative construction incentives. I'm a mid-sized company. How do I apply that for construction? And then we have an MBI, which is for non-construction. How do I apply my bid incentives that are applicable for that work service contract solicitation? Diversity credit program, again, that is specifically for construction and professional services. Target market program, not construction only. That is another program area where we recap and give you more specifics about what is a target market. Mentor protege program is another area. MBE, WBE phase graduation program. So there are various programs that are all applicable that are part of the bid incentives. So you say to yourself, why is she telling me all of this? All of these bid incentives actually, depending upon the type of project, or I shouldn't say project, the procurement, you qualify for credits that work in your favor for you, then a greater possibility for you becoming the lowest bidder in the case of a competitive bid, or in as well as construction, because that's also a competitive bid, or in the case of a professional services, if you offer a certain type of mentor protege program, or you have a diversity program, those are all applicable toward your proposals and your responses. Okay, here's an overview of all the bid incentives. I mentioned several of them to you already. All this information regarding bid incentives and how does it apply and what were those percentages and how does this work and which contracts apply, those are all found on our website. Again, there are workshops that go into specific detail about these programs. This is a great opportunity for small businesses to learn about them, to see by chance if you qualify for them, so that when you're submitting your bids, you get credit for this. And again, it improves your opportunity as being the low bidder because you're applying your credits that you actually qualify for. Okay, so the executive order diversity reporting, as a requirement, the Department of Procurement Services is to actually report our compliance plan, the bid incentives, all of that has to be notified to the public as well as the City Council so that they are aware that we are fulfilling the different programs, the bid incentives, the diversity programs that are out there that the city offers. We have to notify the applicable, we have to do reports on that to let them know that we are in compliance with the regulations. Okay, and the DPS website offers many and much of the information that I've given you a high level overview. You can see awarded contracts if you're interested. And again, using the example of the roofing contract for the library, let's say there was a prior contract, you want to know what their pricings were. What was the term of that contract? Do they have a price adjustment allowance? All those questions could be answered, and it's very good as a interested bidder. If I were bidding that particular project, it would be a new solicitation for the roof repair, to go back and look at those awarded contracts and see what kind of modifications, what was presented at that time and how it's changed presently. Payments are also available on the website. You can see when the prime was paid. Bid tabulations, once that bid opens and you view it on YouTube, you could see who those firms that bid on that example of the library roof repair. You could roofing repair. You could see that. There's weekly bid opportunities. You can see all of them: professional services, competitive bids, Construction, they're all there. Searchable MBE, WBE directory, that's very important when you're putting together your bid package. It allows you to see what firms are out there to help you fulfill those compliance percentages. Bid incentives, I've spoken about those earlier on. And of course, there's regulations for which we have to follow, going back to the municipal code as well as state statute. And then we also have the www.chicago.gov/e-procurement. That information is all available on our DPS website. Okay, now that I've given you my high-level overview about procurement fundamentals and how we work, and kind of touched upon what the different contracts that are out there and vehicles for you to view and to participate in, I open it up to questions. Jackie, do we have any questions?
I don't see any right now, but thank you, L'Oreal. I just want to quickly go back to that first screen so that you get your proper the proper how do you say display of your name here. Are you seeing the full slide or are you seeing the other one?
No, we can see my name as the presenter.
Okay. Alrighty. I just want them to be able to have that first proper slide that's supposed to go on there. All right. So no, I didn't see any questions, but I'll give them a few minutes to put their questions in the Q&A panel if they have any. And I am going to put something in the chat panel real quick for you as well, just so that you have a little bit more information in case you're looking for where you can find a few things. I do want to say, give a shout out to everyone to say, if you're looking for doing some of the things that L'Oreal has just introduced to you in this workshop, a good place to network to do that is at our upcoming 2-day event that we have. We have a Primes Connect matchmaking event. There are some criteria though for that, for you to sign up for that. But we also have an annual City of Chicago procurement symposium. And so anyone can come to this procurement symposium where we have various workshops and discussions going on, as well as we have an entire exhibit hall with the exhibitors from government entities, assist agencies, sister agencies, and anchor organizations and financial institutions. So if you are interested in that, what better way to get more information and talk to people about what you're looking to do and how you're looking to grow your business, pitch your business to others. I don't see any questions, so I guess they may be all good, L'Oreal. So I do definitely want to thank you today for giving that great information to our panelists. And I want to say to our attendees, use some of the resources that we have given you in today's session and go online and figure out if there's more information that you need to know. And hopefully we will see you again at another one of these workshops. Have a wonderful rest of your day and we will see you soon. Thank you, L'Oreal.
Thank you, Jackie. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.